Let's take care of our update method for lessons. Now we're going to need to get the series, the lesson that we're trying to update, and also the request. So we don't need the ID in this case, right? So Laravel is automatically going to know what to inject. Then how do we want to update this lesson? Lesson, update, request, all. I think this will do. Then what we can do is return lesson fresh. Okay, because this operation actually returns to us a boolean, then we return a fresh copy of that response to our front end. So we can actually inject a custom request right here, so we can define our validation rules, or we can actually also define our validation rules in the controller right here. So let me just generate an edit lesson request. So PHP artisan make request, update lesson request. If I head over to update lesson request, I'll change this to a true to make sure we have access. Then I'll head over to my create lesson request and make sure I also have exactly the same validation rules. Update lesson should actually have exactly the same validation rules, and that will give us a little bit of protection. Okay, then we need to tell Laravel to inject rather than the default request. Okay, so we need update lesson request, and we'll use that at the top. So pass all of the attributes in the request to the update method, and then return a fresh copy of the lesson to our front end. Okay, so let's head over back to our view component. So this is our lessons.view. Now we have this edit button right here, which is used to update. And what we're going to do is add a click event, and this is going to call edit lesson. And this is simply going to pass or taking the lesson that we are trying to edit. Okay, so let's create that method. Edit lesson, and we are taking in the lesson. Now we have a choice here. We can actually handle the editing of the lesson, or we could pass it down to the child component, which already has a form that we could use to edit the lesson. Okay, so I'm just gonna say this.emit edit lesson event, and the data we're gonna pass as a payload is the lesson that we just received. Okay, then in our child component we can actually listen to this. So create lesson.view. We might actually think of renaming this now that it has two functionalities, but it's okay by me. This.parent.on the edit lesson request. Then we're gonna do something. First of all, let's receive the payload, which is the lesson that we are trying to edit. And what do we want to do? Now that our form actually has two functionalities, what we want to do is actually manage the state of the form. So we need to know if the form is actually in editing mode or in creation mode. So let's just say editing, and by default the form is going to be false, which means it's in creation mode. Then what we want to do is, as soon as we listen to this event, we want to make sure editing is true, and we're going to do a little changes in our template that are going to help us know that the form is editing and it's not creating. Okay, so once we do that, what do we want to do? We want to make sure that the title is set to lesson the title. Okay, the description also is set to lesson the description. Same thing with all the other attributes we have. Video ID should be set to lesson.video ID. Episode number 2 should be set to episode number. So this dot episode number. Great. So now that the form is editing, the first thing we can do is actually change the handler for this button. So we can say, if this form is editing, show a save lesson button, but then if it's in creation mode, we're going to change it to create lesson. Okay, so we can attach our VIF here. So VIF equals not editing, or we can actually attach a VElse just so we don't have to use a not. And what we're going to do is duplicate this button, and right here this is going to have the VIF. So VIF equals editing. Then we're going to have the save lesson button displayed to us. And the most important part, we're going to call an update lesson method on click, right? So we have a button for create lesson and one for update lesson, and it all depends on the state of our form. So if the form is in editing mode, then it's going to show the update lesson button. Awesome. So let's go ahead and create that method, update lesson. And for now, let's simply say console.log updating. Okay, so we listen to an event which is edit lesson, and then we transform the form into an editing form by setting this property editing, and then we set the attributes for our form to be equal to the lesson attributes that we just got from our parent, okay, which is going to pass it as a payload. So let's go ahead and try this out in the browser. For a quick refresh, and then click on the edit button, check out our create form. We discover that it's automatically populated with the details for this lesson, right? So what we want to do is actually open up the modal, right? So let's head over back to our create lesson, and we'll call this create lesson open modal. Okay, so refresh, click on that, and sure enough, we have our modal with the description, ID, title, and everything. So let's take care of the AJAX request in the next session.